and when I saw the numbers, you generated just shy of like $80,000 in 30 days.
Yeah, I was right at the 80K, maybe just above the 80K in our first 30 days, somewhere in there.
So, and that's cash collected, am I right?
Correct.
So let's set the stage here for this, Lou. Um, Give me a little bit background of you.
Yeah, so currently, my wife and I met, 20 years ago or so here in Denver, and we moved away and we started making acquisitions. And the very first part of our acquisitions, we got into Jackson Hewitt Tax Service. We bought 17 stores, and then we kind of continued to grow and buy, and then we got up to 43 locations. And then on top of that, we bought a couple home instead senior cares. So we kind of had this big empire going out on the East Coast. And then COVID hit and we sold everything. Luckily, our businesses were at the time we didn't know what pandemic proof was, but they were pandemic proof, pandemic resistant, both of them. And they were up year over year. And there's a lot of dry powder, a lot of money in the scene for acquisitions. And we were in two hot sectors. So we sold both of those. Moved back to Denver, which is where, Nancy's from and her entire family, so that we would be surrounded with that. We have a now 8-year-old girl. And we kind of started all over again. We're a little bit too young to retire, not quite enough money in the bank. And so we started making more acquisitions and we bought a couple of CPA firms and a facility management firm. And I'm running the facility management firm historically, and Nancy running the tax firm. And then, we went from running a 10,000 client firm to a much smaller. So now the dynamic of Nancy's day-to-day job really shifted from running an organization to having more of a job like tax prep, doing the tax prep work. And before we would make sure that we had people training people. I mean, we would make sure that the wheels weren't falling off the organization. It was a real business. It's all real business, but you always hear the difference between owning a business and owning a job, right? So we actually made a shift the opposite direction after selling and bought Nancy a job. And so over the last few years, she's been stuck in the trenches. She's been.
So, what made you make that shift, Luke? Because most people want to get to that scale. Well, maybe not to that scale, but you guys are 10,000 customers a year. That's pretty significant revenue, I'm sure. What were you guys doing top line at the time? Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, it was just under 4 million. It was like a 3.5, in
Okay.
between 3.5 and 4 million, depending on the year. And bottom line was about 1.2 net on that
Okay.
company, on the tax company.
How many employees did
Um,
you guys have for that?
150, 200.
Between
But
43 stores?
yeah, and we
Holy
have to
smokes.
remember that a lot of the employees, like our job was really hiring and training, right? Because a lot of the employees fall off. And so we only really had a core group of maybe 40, or 60 employees. And then every year we're having to train and hire and or bring back people that are all part-timers, so it was a really big different business model. And then so it was a shift for us to go into having Nancy be the one working the 80-hour weeks during hell weeks. And hell weeks for her were much longer than 3 weeks. It's more like 2 months, because she was the one, doing most of it. A couple of admin, couple of but really, in talking to Steve, it's cool that he was here earlier. The numbers were very similar to when he came on to before Tax Mavic. I think this side of $500,000 in revenue right now is what we were running last year. I think it was about 460,000 was revenue, if I'm not mistaken.
With your current tax firm now.
Yeah,
When
and
when you
so
guys
it's
made the shift to us, you guys consolidated a lot of the stuff into just being like a one person firm.
so we sold the big company, moved back
Yeah.
to Denver, bought some small companies, and really plugged Nancy in there to do the work. And after 3 years of that, it's just like, man, something's got to change. We've been talking for years about doing advisory, and that's when we're hit with the ads, right? Both of us on our cell phones are hit with the Tax Maverick ads, and like, let's try this. If we don't do something, nothing's going to change, right? And so, um, we
And what
knew.
was that biggest, what was that big like you saw it for 3 years, you knew you wanted to do it, but what was that thing that like uh, was it like all the stars aligned, you and her both looked at your phones together like there's this guy, let's do
Yeah.
that.
There's
That's how it
probably a
worked?
little bit of luck in there,
Okay.
right? That we were both targeted by Tax Maverick, but you know how the algorithms work with the social medias, they listen to you talking. And so we were talking about it more and then we were hit with the ads. Um, it's a trend too in a lot of the CPA firms around that they are moving towards advisory. You know, one of the things that I do, I've done a lot of acquisitions and sales and some other companies as well. So I've launched an M&A side and I have a client right now, we're under contract, knock on wood, for $18 million that's selling. But it's funny because I'm talking to their CPA and the same thing. Like we're like looking at their EBITDA, it's like 6 million. I'm like, we got to do something about your tax bill. And they're like, yeah, our CPA is saying the same thing, you know. And I'm like, hey, well, if he's already pitching it to you, I'm not trying to steal business. And he's like, no, 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 we want to talk to you. We like you. And so, you know, it is a trend that I'm noticing that more firms are getting on board. And I'm even seeing some tax CPA firms that have already made the shift are now for sale. And so for us, any business that we're into, we want to look at what the value of that business is for an exit one day, whether it's 4 years from now, 2 years from now, or a decade from now. And the way to do that is to make a shift to have whether it be less clients or more revenue, but that ratio needs to be there. Your dollar amount per client needs to be there. It needs to be a better ratio than cranking away for 400, 500, even $800 a return. Um, Something needs to change.
Mm. And then so what did you guys like when you guys first came in, like what was that first like I guess like the aha moment for you guys specifically?
It was tough to, and I can only imagine like with me and Nancy, we always play devil's advocate, almost like right away. When one of us says something, the other one just goes to the other side just for the sake of it. That's how married couples are, right? And so, but it's a good thing because we get to hash out the pros and cons of anything. So for me, if it's like if I'm a business owner and I'm the only decision in joining Tax Maverick or not, I'm probably much more like let's go, let's go, let's go. Nancy's more like conservative. And so you probably have like this internal battle in your head, not only for joining Tax Maverick, but then to implement the strategies. Like we had to battle each other and saying, no, 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 we need to follow the system. Let's do this. And so there's this internal battle that you're probably having with yourself if you're the only decision maker that you're like, man, I know I should be doing this, but I'm not doing X, Y, and Z. That's BS. You know, you mentioned something, Daniel, that I had spoken to a couple people that have been a part of Tax Maverick since last year or before us, and the aptitude is through the roof, but they just haven't done some of the things. And so it's just like, look, we're starting in the middle of tax season. It's February here, and we're in the thick of it now. And so if we can do it now by embracing what we should be doing, which is starting off sending an email, starting off categorizing all your contacts, whether they be your book of business or the people that you know, figuring out who falls into a category that you want to target, and then sending an email. For us, you had mentioned you want to get into some of the technicals. For us, sending that email was big. We really changed. We changed a few things. The title was very. We wanted to get it like riveting, so it said "Action Required 2026." Tax liability or something like that. And then we drafted the email. We used an email that you guys had, and we altered some things and changed some things. I think Rosie put it in the group for the email that we're using, so you guys can look at that. But we I remember something, Daniel, you were going over in the training. It was either you could be highly custom, which is maybe more effective with conversions, or not be custom, which is more efficient and you might have less conversions. We chose to be more custom.
Yeah.
So in that email, we highlighted what their tax liability will be. And we said, if you do nothing different, if you don't change, you're going to owe $86,000 this year. We've got some systems that we can implement. We know we can help you. Let's set up a meeting. When are you free when can I have my my admin reach out to you to set up that meeting?
Yeah. how many people did you guys so when you're talking about that training that we're talking about, that's the get client challenge that you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay. So on that right there, on that process right there, how many names did you come up with when you created this process in day one and first day of that?
We have and looking back, maybe, we implement it right away. So
Yeah.
like we probably should have, I would change things now. But I think the key takeaway from this meeting is who gives a shit? Pardon my French. Just go. And then you'll learn and figure out as you go. So for us, we targeted anybody who owed $25,000 in tax liability or more. That's gonna be an issue because on the lower end, if you're a business owner, that's no problem. But if you're a W-2 earner with some of the strategies, it's difficult, right? So to answer your question, we highlighted 162 people that would benefit from tax advisory services. And so
Mhm.
we've been right now, we're so busy that we haven't really followed up. We've just getting the people who are responding, and dealing with them. So we've sold over 30 assessments so far, and we sold one annual plan. Um, and some of those assessments went for more than 2,500 bucks. We went, because I remember one of the calls that are in Tax Maverick, I think with Kyle.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
he was overselling it. David was already sold, and then he kept selling it and kept selling it, and so that stood out. And so whenever we're delivering these assessments, and we get somebody who's like, "Yep, let's do it," we just stop the video and we'll tell them. We stop the slideshow and we'll tell them what they need to know in the slideshow for later. Like, hey, I don't want the other shoe to drop. Just so you know, we're going to do this assessment, deliver it to you. But one of the reasons I think personally that we may have a lower closing ratio on assessments. We're hovering around the 50%, maybe a little bit less for people that we are sitting with assessments. Is that we're very clear with our clients that there is another implementation fee.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be pissed off later when we show up. So we hedge that when they ask, hey, how much is that going to charge? Look, we don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know what I'm going to prescribe you, what medicine we're going to prescribe you. We don't know how much work it's going to take, but I can promise you this. Once we have done the assessment, which is what we need to do to figure out what you're going to be saving in taxes, once we deliver that assessment to you, I'm going to have it all laid out for you. I'm going to tell you what strategies we're going to use, why we're going to use them, how much it's going to save you on the federal and state, and then what it's going to cost for us to implement it. And keep in mind, Mr. Client, we're business people and we know that you are too, right? You're not going to do something that doesn't make sense. So if this is your tax liability and this is what it's going to cost for us to implement it, we're going to try to make sure that it's a no-brainer for you to partner with us on the implementation. And by the way, we don't want to nickel and dime you with an assessment each year. This assessment fee, this 2,500 bucks, is really just a cover our butt fee for me and Nancy to spend the time to work on your assessment, partition out that time in our calendar, right? Instead of taking on other clients, we need to be compensated for that time to create this assessment. It's a one-time fee. Our goal is to partner with you every year. And we want to earn our keep by earning that implementation fee. Once we have this assessment for you, we'll know what that's going to cost. But we want it to be a situation where you come back each year.
Mm. Now, when you started doing this, and I like your number. So you said about 160 people at the top.
Yep.
Okay, so then that means you're closing at 55%, which means you booked probably 70 of those appointments. Is that right?
I'd have to look at those numbers. We've closed over 30 right
Okay.
now.
And you're
Um,
55%, which would be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 70 people you've talked to.
yeah, that's probably sounds about right. I have the
Yeah.
stack over there, but yeah.
You're good. You're good. But the idea here is that I want people to really understand that it's not just like, you're just going to talk to everyone and they're just going to want to buy. It's not the case. And that's because you're coming from a state of confidence. You have this confidence aura around you that everyone, I'm sure everyone here, would you guys agree that when Lou's talking, you're like, okay, I mean, it makes sense. Like, it does make sense when you're talking. Now, what gives you that confidence, Lou? Because I'm pretty sure you're not a, super like in depth on the strategies and like, this
No.
part right here. Like, what gives you that confidence or even that ability to be able to be so confident in that procedure, if you will, even though you don't have as much knowledge as everybody else?
I think that's the big thing. Like when we were going through sitting in like before joining Tax Maverick, and you have all these folks that are much more qualified than myself. I've been out of the tax game for almost a decade, right?
Huh.
And you just you just have to make a decision
Yeah.
to have that you have to lean into it. You have to say, okay, it's helping other people, and I can either be my own roadblock
Yeah.
or I can be my biggest fan. And when you're your own roadblock, you're just not going to make the sales, right? You need to lean into the system and realize that other advisors are making the sales, other advisors are doing it. Shit, why can't I? And even though you guys have 100% more knowledge than I do on taxes in general, my wife included, Nancy, she's got a lot more knowledge. I'm the one that's doing most of the selling. And it's just because I've leaned into it and made the decision to say, okay, this can help you. It's a no brainer. I
Yeah.
mean, why give money to Uncle Sam? We had somebody today. We pitched an annual plan to. I think he's going to sign up. So now we're at the position where a lot of these people where we sold assessments, we're starting to pitch annual plans. So I think we're going to have some 100K months coming up. But we were so close to our in our first month. But we had somebody today that was like, uh, we have clients that stand on both sides of the political aisle, and
Mm,
the one today was on the left side,
mm.
and really was honing in on the charitable financing. And well, I wish it was something that I could pick. I'm like, hey, listen, that's not what this is. We're not talking about humanitarian. We're talking about taxes. And I'm not to be so harsh, but the goal here that Nancy and I have for you is to save you money on your tax liability. Period. I don't want you focusing on, well, I'm going to do the Augusta rule. I'm going to pick the charity. That's not what this is about. This is about what strategies we believe fit you the most and are going to give you the best leverage. The reason we're picking DNA Harmony, and we do have two others, is it's going to give you the best leverage on your input. We're not suggesting this because it's a humanitarian effort. We're suggesting this because it's going to save you money on taxes. Now, personally, Nancy and I donate to causes that we have a church. We donate. What you do with your tax savings is completely up to you. When we spoke on your assessment, your priority was right now you've got nothing in your retirements. You're on a Schedule C. We're in this particular client, we're shifting him from that to S corp. We're doing the Augusta rule. We're doing all these things that are going to create savings. Now you can then take that money and go do what's important for you. You can start setting up those ROS, and we don't have that in this assessment right now, but there's 100 more things that we can do. For you, we have four things. We want to do four things this year. And keep in mind, the goal here is to save you money on your taxes. If you think that donating to your cause is a good use of those funds, I say go for it. If you think that contributing to a retirement is a good use of those funds, I say go for it. But that's not what these four strategies are for. These four strategies are to save you money on taxes.
Right. Like keeping the main thing the main thing.
Yep.
Like keeping them, yeah, yeah. And I see that. I see that sometimes. And so, what gives you that David put in the chat? Like you keep control of the call. How are you able to keep control of a call when clients come to you and you say, "Well, I'm not going to make a decision until I have all the strategies. I need to know everything."
Yeah, I think on anything that you get derailed on in sales, what's very important is that you don't gloss over the client so they don't feel unanswered. But it's also important that you don't allow them to derail the conversation. So I think the most important thing is to address their concern enough that they feel it addressed, and bring the conversation back to whatever you were talking about, back to the path.
Give me an
I mean,
example.
so so one example is when they do focus on the strategies, I like to say, okay, look, Daniel, I know you want to know how DNA harmony works.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna give you a very basic example and explain it. I don't have, I could talk to you for 2 days about this, about a strategy, right? I could talk to you for a week about a strategy. I'm gonna be very simple, but I want you to focus on the fact that it's not the strategy that you're paying me for. It's the strategist. Because
Mm.
what we recommend this year may be completely different from what we recommend next year. Or halfway through the year, I might get a phone call and you may have something change in your personal life and the strategy might change. So I don't want you to fixate on the strategy. I don't want you to have to try to go learn how to do the Augusta rule. That's our job. We're going to do that. But I want to answer your question. Essentially, you're taking advantage of leverage. Okay. You're going to donate, stick with me on the numbers. You're going to donate $1 and get a $6 write off.
Mm.
Okay. This is medical equipment. You're partnering with a third party partner of ours called DNA Harmony. You're going to donate $1 and they're going to get you a K1 write off for $6. You get to take that $6 loss because what ends up happening is before you make the donation, there's an appraisal on that equipment. So you get via IRS code, you get to write off the amount of the full appraisal value.
Mm.
That's
Which
it in a nutshell.
and then you kind of like elaborate, like which means you can use that money to do the things you want to do, right?
Yeah, and I show them the slide, right? And
Yeah.
that's why you're donating 39,000 and getting X amount of a write off, which shows you this much in savings in federal and tax. Right? This is the savings that you're going to get by donating 30 grand. You're going to get 60 grand in tax savings. You're going to get
Gotcha.
108, whatever the numbers are, 180,000 in write-offs and whatever the tax is. So it's a very simple way of saying you get to donate some money, you get to get a really big write-off, and then you get to have some more tax savings than what you're donating.
Yeah.
It's just it's a tool that we use and a lot of the rich people use it to create tax savings, and that's the goal here. That's all these three strategies that we're coming up with. We're going to layer them. It doesn't just stop there. It's the whatever other strategies we have, and then we create this little tax flow. If there's three strategies or four strategies, we have a slide for each strategy, and then at the end we'll start off with a box saying current tax liability, arrow, tax liability after implementing this, arrow, tax liability, arrow, tax liability, so they can really see it all come together in one slide.
Like a roadmap. You're giving them like a roadmap to
Yes.
like the ultimate, like, hey, this is where you'll be at the end of these things. So they
Yeah.
have a clear picture of where we're going after this thing.
Yeah, because to your point, we don't want to dive in too much to
Yeah.
any of the strategies, right? We want to, if they have questions, we want to answer them, but we want to move back on to the slides. So a lot of times they'll, not a lot of times, we haven't done this a lot, but a couple of times I've noticed that the client will really harp in on one and we'll sit there, we'll try to, you know, be there with them, but then we'll just have to move on. We'll say, look, Daniel, you'll understand, I think, a lot more if we continue through and you'll see the layers of these strategies. And that really does help once we have that slide towards the end showing each strategy and the tax savings. It simplifies things for them. And then I reiterate, like, guys, you don't need to know the ins and outs of these strategies. I'll tell
Mhm.
them that. You do
Yeah.
not need to know the ins and outs. You need to know that you're paying $16,500 to partner with myself and Nancy to implement these strategies. We upped it from 14,000 to 16 and a half. So
There you
that's
go.
what we're selling them.
Just gave yourself a little $2,000 bump. I like that.
Yep.
There you go. So take me back here because I think some of this you have an emotional like kind of like a bedrock of a just kind of like non you're not like waving or moving emotionally in all these conversations. It seems like you're pretty standard in your approach on these things. So help me understand something. What's been the hardest thing for you? Because usually when people come in, their biggest challenge is, can this work for me? All right. That's probably a pillar. As soon as you saw it, you're like, okay, that makes sense. And then how does this work specifically? And usually you find that out on the job. But usually people don't want to take that risk of doing it
That's
on
the
the
biggest
job.
challenge. That was the biggest challenge for us.
So how did you
Like
overcome that? Or tell me where those mental shifts start to break down for you.
for Nancy, it was bigger than me.
Yeah.
Nancy was and rightfully so, because she has to work with these clients every day, right?
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to sell anything that she doesn't believe in or doesn't understand,
Hmm.
right? And so here we are kind of selling a bunch of assessments, and then we're like an oh shit moment where we're like, oh God, we have to create these assessments. And so it was a lot of last minute calls with George and Rosie, trying to coordinate, getting on, creating these assessments. We still don't fully understand all the assessments we have, or all the plans. We've honed in on a handful that we are recommending and really understand. In fact, Nancy's on a call right now with George to go over. We have a high W-2 income earner, and I think that the best one to implement is the equipment leasing for them. But Nancy doesn't fully, you know, because I'm not involved in her day to day. She's been busy with taxes, and I've been more involved in this since we decided to go Tax Maverick, and so it's been helpful. But I'm a little bit more educated on this particular strategy than she is, so she needs to get educated enough to where she's proficient enough to understand it, to not only decide to pitch it, but have the confidence to pitch it. So for us, it was a balance of really being quick to act, but
Hmm.
also trying to understand these things. And that's the difficult thing. I think a lot of advisors here probably running into the same thing. Like, how do I how do I pitch this when I don't fully understand it, or I don't, I'd say you don't need to understand it. And it's a freaking leap of faith if you don't understand it and you're selling an assessment. You just need to get educated on them before you deliver the assessment and deliver the annual plan. So sell the assessment, understand that there are methods that we can utilize to reduce your client's taxes. Then get with George, get with Raul, get with, whoever. Shoot, how do I build these things? How do I what do you think is the best? And use that Excel chart. It says, is it a W-2? Is it a business owner? Are they making more than 500K, less than 500K? There's a chart that's super helpful. Um, and then in the Tax Maverick software, you can look at the strategies, and they'll have little descriptions in there as well. For us, it wasn't quite enough. We needed to jump on a meeting with George and understand him a little bit. And George talks fast, right?
Yeah.
He's kind of all over the place, and I love him. George is great, but when you're first learning about it, it's like, so, whoa, slow down. What do you mean? And it's easy to talk fast when you understand them, right? But when you've never really done them, it's like, well, how does this work? How does it, you know? But
Yeah.
you
Oh,
don't
I
you
have a
don't need to understand them to sell the assessment. Just understand it before you deliver the assessment.
gotcha. So you did 80,000 in 30 days. So help me out here. If we can get a little tactical, a little pragmatic, if you will, about the actual doing of the thing so someone could replicate the same thing. What are, if someone wants to replicate the results that you have, Lou, what would you say is like 3 to 5 steps that they must do to ensure that they can get close? Maybe they won't get your exact results, but ensure success that they can also get very similar results.
Yeah, it's very simple. First, start out with you go back to when you joined, or if you just joined, right? Um, Look at the steps that Tax Maverick recommends. First, you need to identify who your target prospects are. So if you've got an existing book of business, look at them, sort them by however your software sorts them, maybe sort them by AGI, and then look in each one and see what their federal and state taxes are, and put them in a category that you want to target. We stopped there, and I'm going to admit we probably should have gone through our Facebook list, and we should have gone through our personal contacts. We didn't do that. We felt like we had a lot of clients that and we still haven't exhausted them. We haven't gone, okay, but get that list, send them an email, then have your admin or yourself follow up with phone calls.
Mhm.
That was the very next
Did
step.
you have them respond to that email, or what was the
Yes.
call to action on that email?
Yeah, so that email's in the group chat. If you guys
Okay.
want to go back and look at it, Rosie has it too, so she can post it. But the email at the very end, to me, every email when you're trying to sell somebody something needs to have a call to action at the end, so that it leaves the client with the feeling of like I got to do something.
What to do
Like
next?
yeah. So we changed the email a little bit from what you guys had, and we said, hey, when when is good for you? Let me have my admin reach out. Can we schedule a call immediately? We want to take advantage of the full year's tax benefits, right? So we want to call immediately. When's the soonest time you're available? Question mark. And
Hmm.
the exact verbiage is in there in that email that's posted in the general chat. But that's the first step is sending that email out, highlighting what their tax liability was. And at the time we knew 2024's, right? We didn't have all their stuff for 25 yet, but you guys are going to be getting 25 stuff now. So you'll have maybe a little bit more accurate. So we highlighted that like your tax liability was $78,000. We have strategies. We can mitigate this. We can immediately put this in your pocket. So, when's best for you to talk about this? Second step is so first step, create the list. Second step, send the email. Third step is to follow up with phone calls. Get your admin or get you on the phone and follow up with phone calls to schedule those meetings. Um, Probably book. We booked way too soon. Our meetings are taking about like a half hour each, but some of them can go up to 45 minutes. And we were booking them like we were having 10 meetings a day and we were booking them way too close. So we were having to rush through these meetings. And so that's something that I would change. I would give an hour in between each meeting or an hour and 15 minutes or something. You don't want the meeting to go on very long, but sometimes you have a really talkative client and it's cool that you're building that rapport and that's great. But just give yourself a little bit more. I was booking them and it was our admin that was booking them because she was doing what we told her to do, which was book them, I don't know, every 45 minutes apart is what we were booking them. And so it was like, oof, man, we were running into some of those talkers. We were running into 45 minutes. So get on the phone, book meetings, put maybe, especially since it's tax season, either put 2 hours a day aside that you can book these meetings or 2 days a week that you can book these meetings and then do taxes on the other time. But pack your schedule. I like it when a full day is packed and then you can put everything aside and put the blinders up. So pack a couple of days of setting it aside because it's going to be a revenue creator. When we're selling them for 2,500 bucks and you're closing half of them and you have, you know, 10 of them, you're looking at $12,000 days, which is great. um, that's kind of the days that you're getting when you're in the heat of it in tax season anyways, right? So it's like those you got to balance it. You got to be able to do your taxes and not have pissed off clients. But this is going to eventually, especially once you add in the annual plans, and some of the kickbacks that you're getting for some of these. We did the math, and we're going to be well into the $20,000 range once you include the $2,500 assessment, the 16.5 for the annual plan, and then another $3,000 for a kickback. We're looking at 2,300 bucks per client. It takes four clients on an annual plan at that rate to reach about 100K, 4 or 5 clients. That's crazy to think about. So, it's making a shift from being in the grind of tax returns to a lot of these strategies not taking up a ton of your time. I mean, if you could have 4 or 5 clients making you 100K, Jiminy, that changes your time input.
For sure. Okay, so that's the 3 to 5 steps that you would take. So what mistakes would you say like someone should avoid? I know you said the time thing. Maybe time blocking is one. Setting up an hour long call. Are there any other things that you're like you guys hit when you're kicking, kickstarting the momentum and pushing 10 calls a day? Are there any mistakes that came up that you're like, man, if I come back, I'll do it differently this way? I know you mentioned in the
For
beginning you
sure.
would. What would you say? Some of the
For
mistakes you would
sure.
avoid?
And by the way, I wouldn't do it differently.
Okay.
Mistakes, yes, I've made, but the reason I say that is because if I would have been more educated, which I wish I was, if I would have had better rebuttals. I would have maybe increased my closing ratio if I shifted, if I had longer time to sell these people. I would have, there's a lot of things I would have done differently, but I don't know that it would have behooved me versus just doing. So when I answer this question, I want you guys to know that I don't want you to start thinking about mistakes as being like I need to fix these things or have things 100% before I implement. It's quite the opposite. I'm glad that I've didn't know and didn't know how to push back. So for example, a Roth conversion, our very first person that we pitched the annual plan, she's coming back. I think she's going to sign. We'll see. But she's like, I can do this on my own. And I pushed back just enough because I knew just enough, but I should have pushed harder and said, well, yeah, but you're going to get taxed at regular income. And I did say that, but I should have doubled down. I should have been harder. I should have been, there's things that you're going to learn on how to talk to people that you're not going to learn unless you do. So you're not going to be 100%, you know, I, I would say make the mistakes, make those mistakes because analyze what you're saying wrong or what you're saying that you need to tweak or what you need to when you need to push. Right now for me, we need to work on and David just did a meeting on this on Monday, I think, on rebuttals at the end of an annual plan. We need to work on a way of making people sign and being strong without being pushy. And so, you know, incorporating the things that you're saying, you're gonna sharpen your knife as you go along, but you need to start doing, make those mistakes. The hour per client is something that I would do. I would
The
end
time
my
blocking is a good one. The time block is a real good one. Like
yeah
2 days of like cells versus
two
like
days.
one in the
Yeah,
morning, one at night.
yeah, like just make sure that you have the time to set aside, and then I get it. You're gonna have to do tax returns too, but you're gonna make a ton of mistakes when you're pitching these plans. Just do it, and you'll sharpen. I would say just analyze what you're doing. I record all our meetings, so I can go back and look at them, and I'm like, man, like especially in the beginning, I'm like, man, I was weak right there. I could have been stronger. I could have pushed back harder without being pushy. One of the things that I like to tell them and we're adopting is at the end of it, they're like, well, okay, I need to think about it, and it's like, okay, I get it. Um, but I don't know what there is to think about. You're paying today, you got a $96,000 tax bill. I've just highlighted how to get you to $9,000. And this happened today. And this is what I told him today. And I go, look, I don't want to be pushy because if I'm pushing you, you're not going to be comfortable implementing them. It's a sin to have to go through this, charge you, and then nothing happens. Like that's crazy to me. That's a sin. What I want you to think about is not the things that you brought up as concerns today of, oh, the Augusta rule is that, how can I do that? How can I, which charity am I doing? No, stop that. The thing that you need to think about is implementing these strategies or any strategies worth $16,500. It's as simple as that. Like, and I don't want to be pushy. Yes, go home, think about it. But I'm going to call you on Monday. And I just want to answer yes or no. I don't want to be hounding you. I don't have time to hound you. Um, take your time, have the weekend. When is good for you on Monday? And this is another thing. In the very beginning, we weren't booking meetings from a meeting. And
Yeah.
so then we're having to hound these people. So now make sure that when they need to think about it, you need to book a meeting and they'll try to say, we had one of our very first guys tried to push it out 2 weeks. And I remember somebody saying something on one of the meetings, like it's dead at that point. You can't do 2 weeks. And so he's like, we suggested like tomorrow. And he was like, whoa, like 2 weeks. Is that too long? I go, yes, that's much too long. You, you're going to make our job harder by delaying this. And I just don't have the bandwidth to make my job harder. I don't want to pursue you. I want to be here for you, and I don't want to be pushy, but you're going to have to make a decision. And the decision should simply be this: is 16 grand worth having an advisor in your pocket, meeting monthly, meeting quarterly, reducing your tax liability? That's it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I love that. That's such a good just kind of like stopping point for them. It's like a decision making thing. Indecision is a decision. And I like what you said about that because I think one of the things that I've grown, even like as we've grown to, multiple six and even seven figures per month is like indecision just compounds. Like people waiting, it's like the worst thing you guys can have on planet Earth. Like the one thing I would rather you say is no than say
Yeah.
it depends or maybe or like that just doesn't help anybody. So I'd rather be upfront and just say like, look, if you're not going to show up, just say no now. So I don't have to waste my time. And
There's something that David said that like I want to incorporate. It just sparked my memory on the Monday meeting. It was something like, let me ask you this. You not deciding, has that put you in this position of you owing $96,000 in taxes? Like that's strong. That's stronger than
yeah,
an acre of garlic. And I think I'm going to start
yeah,
incorporating that
yeah,
at the end. I'm I'm still easing into it. I'm trying not to be too hard,
yeah,
but I think that's something that another thing that we got to work through is getting over the fact and getting out of the comfort zone
all right,
of like we're talking about most CPAs, tax accountants, EAs, whoever, whatever you're doing, you've been dealing with people who have just come over and written you a check for the most part. You haven't had to ask for something crazy. And so it's very much outside your comfort zone to ask for 14 grand or 30 grand. Some of these people I'm seeing are selling assessments for much, much higher. And so, like, and I'm still adjusting to it, right? It's like asking for $16,000 is one thing I'm comfortable, but then having the guts to be like, let me ask you, has being indecisive put you in this position of owing 96K? I'm trying to work up the courage to kind of say stuff like that, but I think it's only going to benefit me if I get out of my own way, like I've been saying through everything else, and start adopting some of those slap in the face wake up moments because it is going to help our client, right?
yeah,
We're talking about selling something, and this is something I tell my client. We're talking about it. Going to your CPA is like going to the dentist in the sense, not in the analogies that David used, but nobody effing likes to do it. It hurts, and you got to pay them money. And so like you guys come into my office, I'm happy to do your taxes for you and charge you for it. That's sure. We can keep doing that. But to get paid to make a meaningful change in somebody's life, how cool is that? I get to charge you 16K, make a good living, and save you 90K in taxes. How cool is that? And so, like, just saying that to them is, I think, pretty impactful.
absolutely. What would you say, Lou? I know we're coming hot on time. What would you say is maybe the one tool, the one resource, maybe the one training that has been the most critical to your success, at least up to this point? Maybe it's a couple
Probably
things.
if I had to pick one, it would probably be watching the sales call from Kyle. I think there was two sales call in the care formula. That was the biggest thing is watching him um, pitch it. That was helpful for me.
Love that. Love that.